Live, we're live. So anyway, this is Daniel with Critical Image Media. So we're live on Shane's channel right now. Whoever is joining in and watching,
What's
basically
up?
just a quick broadcast here to kind of do a little interview with Shane Sparks, the infamous Shane Sparks. Hopefully, if any of you guys are joining in and taking a gander, you're going to see here that we are just doing a quick podcast, but. Just a quick background on myself. So I actually help manage Shane, right? And
Yep.
we kind of done a lot of work together over the past couple of years to build his social media, and we've really got a long ways. So I just thought I'd bring him on my podcast to kind of explain to you guys, especially on YouTube that are watching him, what it took for him to get where he is at, and where we're going right now. So anyway, Shane, introduce yourself.
What's up, guys? My name is Shane Sparks, currently living in Las Vegas. I've been here for 3 years, but I am a Michigan native. I was born and raised on a small farm in southern Michigan.
So
So,
Shane, let me ask you a question. So when you were young, when you were a kid, do you feel like you had like entrepreneurial skills? Like, was this something that was kind of ingrained in you? Did you have your own
oh
lemonade
yeah.
stand or?
Well, actually, my father was a carpenter. So since I was a young boy, my dad was taking me on job sites, and we were doing construction work. We were trimming out houses. We were laying hardwood floors. So I learned a lot about construction and carpentry work at a young age. And actually, before I even left the farm, I was actually making some money on my own with my own tools and my own setup. So yeah, I was definitely had the entrepreneur mindset at an early age.
So let me ask you a question. I know you've made some like past YouTube videos about kind of like where you grew up, and from my understanding, you had a very what would have been called conservative childhood. You were raised in a Amish style community. I mean,
Yes.
how did that play a role in like where you feel you're today? Let me ask you a question. I always wonder this. So let's say you have a lot of people that when they were younger, their parents were very strict, or they were very you know like your parents were. Do you think that like caused you to more or less act out as you were older, or no?
Yeah, I feel like 100% since I was sheltered so much that it kind of like it drove me towards that freedom, like wanting to see what life was like on the other side of all these rules and the traditions that my parents kept. But I think looking back, I experienced that because I mean, honestly, not a whole lot of people have experienced a childhood like what I did. It was pretty crazy. It was really strict. It was just crazy, but I'm glad that I experienced it so I can relate to the other people. Like there's a lot of other kids out there who are growing up in sheltered families like that, and they're going through the same stuff that I went through. So it's kind of cool that I went through that. So like I can relate to those people. There's not many people like that, but I can relate to those people.
I mean, it's just kind of funny because I grew up completely the opposite. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of did whatever the heck I wanted and watched whatever TV I wanted. My parents weren't strict. And it's just, it's hard for someone else to relate, like, what it
Right.
was like to grow up in such a conservative home. So, wait, from my understanding, you guys didn't have a TV?
No, we had no internet. We had no television. I wasn't really allowed off the farm unless I was going to a job site with my father to do construction work. But other than that, I was not allowed off the farm. I didn't really have any friends. I was homeschooled all my life, so my mother took care of my academics. And yeah, man, I didn't really leave the farm and explore life until I was like 21 years old.
So, wait,
So there's a
you
lot ahead.
didn't,
I wasn't familiar with like current movies or movie stars or music or anything really going on in the world. I was not familiar with any of it. Drinking, drugs, the party scene, all that. Had no
so
clue.
you didn't even go to like a public, like not even a private school?
No,
You just were
no.
homeschooled the whole time.
Yeah, so
Have you ever been to public school?
my parents really tried to shelter me from any boy and girl interaction. Like They don't believe that boys hang out with girls and that sort of thing. They don't believe in dating. They believe in courtship. And their plan was for me to have a courtship with another young lady from the Amish community and then eventually marry her and have my own farm and my own family.
It's funny you say the word courtship. Like right now on Netflix, I'm watching this show called Bridgerton, and it's like from the old English days, and they use that courtship like all the time, and they're always trying to arrange marriages. So wait, you never went to any public school or even private school at all?
No,
Never.
no,
You never set foot inside of a school.
never set foot inside of a public or a private school.
That's wild. So let me ask you a question.
And honestly, I was kind of envious of the kids that did get to go to school because I hear my friends nowadays, they talk about how they hated school and everything, but I'm like, well, I was kind of jealous. Like I would have loved to go to school and get to hang out with all the kids at recess and have friends and maybe be involved in sports or band or whatever. I didn't get to do any of that.
Let me ask you a question though. Do you feel like the way you were raised helped at least maybe shape you to be a better person later in life?
Yes, for sure.
Definitely. So, it's like I always say, like, I always watch a lot of Gary Vee or Gary Vaynerchuk, and, his parents were from Russia, and they were very strict, more or less, and they instilled in him to make sure they worked very hard. And, he feels like that, like a lot of like foreign people or people from other countries or Arabic style people that were raised in those like really, conservative style homes where their parents like taught them good values, definitely feel like that helped their like life skills later in life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my father taught me hard work is a virtue. I learned how to work hard. I learned how to work on a project until it's completed. I learned, like I said, I learned a lot of entrepreneur skills just, working along with my father who owned his own construction company. So I got to see how all that kind of worked out. And I even started doing a little bit of it on my own while I was there.
So now that you're older, do you regret that you were raised like that?
No, not at all. I mean, it was a very boring time in my life, and sometimes I wish I had not waited until I was 21 to leave. But it was a good thing that I went through that because, like I said before, like I would have never been able to relate to the people. I mean, there's a lot of kids like my parents, they knew other families that were living and raising their families like they were. We would meet together on Sundays. We didn't go to church because my parents could not find any churches that were conservative enough for them, for their beliefs. So we found these little underground network groups of families that were all trying to like live the same way. And we would take turns meeting in their houses for the Bible study. So I know there were other young kids there, and a lot of them were like not really happy with the way of life that their parents had chosen either. So it's good that I went through that so I can relate to those people.
So now that whole community that you lived in, it wasn't just your family that lived like that. There was a lot of other families.
Not a lot, but there were a few. And like I said, when we would meet together on Sundays, I mean, some of these families were driving a half hour to an hour just to go to the meeting, and there was only like 6 to 10 families meeting every Sunday.
That's wild.
And we didn't even go every Sunday. We didn't even go every Sunday. If my parents weren't feeling the vibe, we would just stay home on Sunday, and my dad would give a Bible study at home.
Wow, that's crazy. So, now, so you left when you're 21. So, explain to me a little bit, like, what made you like say I got to get out of here, or like I just can't take this no more? Like, where was that point where you were like, I'm gone. I got to go.
I was kind of getting to that point when I was like 18 years old. Like I just really started butting heads with my parents because as I started getting closer to my 20s, they started pushing the courtship on me harder and harder. Like they really wanted me to marry one of these girls in the community. And they actually, I mean, it almost happened with a couple different girls in the community. They tried to get me hooked up with. And like I liked the idea of getting married because that was my door to leaving the farm. But my parents don't believe that the young men are to leave their parents until they're married. So marriage to me was a door of opportunity to leave the farm. But in order to leave on their terms, I had to marry a girl that they kind of pre-approved. So it didn't work out with either of the girls because when it came right down to it, I was honest with my parents and I was like, listen, like, I really don't want my wife to wear dresses all the time. And I'm not trying to like avoid beaches all my life. I kind of want to go to beaches someday. I want to go to water parks. I want to do fun things. I'd like my wife to wear a bikini someday too.
Oh
And I
my
was
God,
just
that's
honest
crazy.
with them, and they did not like that. And the one girl's father, she was like, "Well, isn't going to work." I'm like, well,
So let me ask you another question. So you're 21 years old and you're like, all right,
what's that?
yeah. So I don't know if we have a little audio problem here in our podcast. Let me take a look. Hold on. So just for the audience that's listening, this is our first live podcast that we're doing. So hold on, let me
I can
pull
hear
up.
you great.
You can hear me great?
Yeah.
Okay. So another thing, so you're 21 years old, you're like, all right, I'm out of here. I'm leaving the farm. And like,
Right.
where's the first place that you went?
So actually, I actually owned a house when I left my parents' house. So when I worked doing construction work with my father, I kept saving money and saving money, and I finally had a down payment ready to place on a house, and I actually bought a house like 15 minutes away from my parents' place. I bought it with the intention of like, okay, once I have a house, if I ever need to leave my parents, I can leave. But I bought that and told them that I wasn't leaving. I was just gonna like fix up the house on the weekends and work on it, and then I was gonna turn around and flip it and sell it. So they thought it was gonna be an investment, but like in the back of my mind, I was like, well, once I buy this place, I'm probably gonna move there. So
So-
that's what happened. I moved there.
So wait, like how far was the house from your community where you grew up?
About 15 minutes.
Okay, so you were still like in the
Yeah.
area.
I was in the town. Yeah.
So all right, so now I met you, I don't know, it's been about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago?
Wow.
And you were
Yeah.
already living in Detroit.
Yes.
So where's the point where you were like, all right, I'm moving to Metro Detroit or by Detroit? Because you live down a little bit lower Michigan, if everyone
Yes,
understands.
I lived
like,
in South Central Michigan. So basically, where I lived, I could be in Indiana or Ohio in 30 minutes. I was like
Okay.
right there by the border.
so
But
for
it's
people that
different.
don't know, we always use our hand here, Michiganders, to explain where
Yeah.
we live.
So if this is Michigan,
You were like right here, right?
I was like right down here.
The only state where you can use your hand.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for real.
so now like you're like, all right, I'm out of here. And what made you move to Metro Detroit? Do you know people around there or what?
So I lost my job in the little town of Hillsdale where I lived. In 2008, I just got laid off. It was kind of a depression going on at the time in the economy. Lost my job without warning, and there wasn't many other jobs in that town. So I decided just to move closer to the city. I figured there'd be more opportunities, and I would just make more connections. So I just up and moved to Wixom, Michigan, and got a little apartment out there. And I actually got a job at J.C. Penney.
Oh
And
my God.
I just helped people load up their furniture that they bought, and I would go around and collect the hangers from the cash registers. I did all the grunt work, but
So-
paying the bills.
So now listen, all right. So obviously, like if people seen the thumbnail to the video, we're trying to lead to where you're at now. So I know there's a part in here, like, I built your website. So if you guys go
Right.
to sparksgowild.com, it kind of talks about Amish to where you were at. So where now you're living in Metro Detroit, you're working at JC Penney, you're
Right.
already married to Miss Stacy, right?
Yep.
And we kind of skipped over that because you met Miss Stacy back in Hillsdale in the little Amish
Yeah.
community.
Yep.
She was raised the
She
same
grew
way.